The beauty of corporate development, and especially here at Gilead, is it's truly cross-functional. While our team is leading the charge or quarterbacking the deal process, we are bringing in dozens of people across the organization, from research to development to regulatory to manufacturing, commercial, all as part of a broader deal team that's coming in to assess the potential of an asset.
Today, my guest is Devang Bhuva, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at Gilead Sciences. The work Gilead's doing is it's incredible.
And the greatest part about being here is being able to sit with our research colleagues, our development colleagues, our manufacturing colleagues, and see how we actually create these special molecules for patients.
Does competitive tension ever influence your timeline or decision making?
What we try to make sure is it doesn't change our fundamental decision making. It doesn't change our bar for innovation and what's going to matter for patients. It's going to change on how we do the work rather than what the ultimate outcome should be.
Welcome back to Kinara. Really excited about this episode. I'm your host, Dr. Chase Feiger, and today I am joined by someone who works in a really interesting area. A lot of you biotech companies out there are probably thinking, what's the process to acquisition? Is what I'm working on something that might be interesting to a large organization like Gilead? That's why today my guest is Devang Bhuva, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at Gilead Sciences. Devang, it's a pleasure to have you on this episode. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great. It's always great to catch up with you and to talk about a subject I'm really passionate about. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I mean, the work Gilead's doing is it's incredible. I mean, you are a true leader as an organization in antiviral drug development, right? The work that's being done across HIV, hepatitis C, the list goes on around just the incredible nature of Gilead as an organization, the work that's being done in oncology. I want to start off really with your role today at Gilead. What makes the company's approach to business development and M&A different?
Yeah. So the role is a special one at Gilead, one I'm really privileged to be able to have, because it allows Gilead as an organization of, 18,000 people. It's really the conduit to seeing all of the great innovation that's happening outside of Gilead. And so, we're one company in a, fervent ecosystem, a vibrant ecosystem, a global one, and being able to see the innovation that's happening everywhere else and then be able to collaborate and partner with those companies and bring some of what Gilead has to offer to those companies. It's a special opportunity to bring in some of the best innovation into the company. And when you look at Gilead's history, so much of it has been built upon external innovation. When you think of our early antivirals from the acquisitions of Triangle Pharma, really created the foundations for what became our HIV franchise. When you look at what we've done to cure hepatitis C, a huge portion of that was due to, acquiring a company called Pharmaset that, started the backbone of our first therapy for hepatitis C cure and allowed us to continue innovating on top of that. And so it's a fascinating and special role that I get to have to be in this position. And what differentiates us today, I think, is Gilead has always had and even continues today to have this mindset that there's one Gilead portfolio. It doesn't matter if it came from internal research or from external innovation. It's something that we will, put the same resource on, have the same mindset toward developing to its fullest potential for patients. The second part I would say is that, we're relatively small compared to companies of our revenue or market cap scale or R&D budget. We're able to be very nimble in our approach, very flexible in our approach. And I think that's required if you want to attract the best innovators to Gilead, and the best innovators to partner with Gilead is taking that sort of a mindset.
You've got a rare mix of finance, strategy, and operational experience. Out of curiosity, how do you stay close to the science while keeping a high-level lens on long-term decisions?
Yeah, it's probably the funnest part of the job, to be honest. And one of the reasons I came to Gilead and left a career in investment banking is actually to get much closer to the science. As a outside advisor to companies, you're working with boards, CEOs, CFOs, heads of business development, but you're not necessarily all that close to the science. And the greatest part about being here is being able to sit with our research colleagues, our development colleagues, our manufacturing colleagues, and see how we actually create these special molecules for patients. And being able to be deep in the diligence of assessing not only the internal programs but also the external programs that we're working on is a core part of the job, and staying as close to that as you can, while also once again bring that outside perspective of some of the dynamics that are shaping our industry into the thought process of how we access that external innovation.
Devang, as you and I have discussed before, there's a lot of biotech companies out there that would love to get corporate development or acquisition interest from an organization like Gilead. And it's really a black box to a lot of those biotech CEOs, commercial leaders, even employees who are joining early stage biotechs that are along for this very long journey of through drug development, clinical development, getting their first indication, potentially second indication. So I know there's a lot of people that are excited to learn a little bit more around how the typical deal cycle works at an organization like Gilead. Can you walk us through a typical deal life cycle at Gilead, really from the first spark of interest to closing? Out of curiosity, the follow-up I really have to that is, what does the arc usually look like when you're
Yeah.
evaluating these opportunities?
Probably what the most interesting part for our team is there is no typical. There's no one way in which it happens. There's no typical timeline or process in which it follows. And it's kind of something we pride ourselves on, is be able to be agile and nimble and flexible as to how we approach getting deals done. So there's certain circumstances where we went from, first meeting with a company to getting a deal done within a matter of, weeks. There's other ones, and many deals actually happen where we are monitoring and following the progress of a company for years before we actually engage on the business development side. So all of those can happen. But what's fundamental for us is this company, have they solved a key problem? Have they come up with something that we think can be a first in class or best in class, and ideally both, solution for a serious unmet need, whether it be on the virology side, oncology side, autoimmune side, and as the three therapeutic areas that we play in? We're really looking for that level of innovation. And what we can bring to the table is we have a phenomenal research and development organization who've been working on some of these products for years and years. We bring that experience to the table so we can hopefully assess really well amongst the thousands of biotech companies out there who has really cracked the nut on some of these problems. That's really what triggers then our interest in being able to want to partner with them, and or to collaborate with them, or to in-license or acquire these assets. Is once we've gotten that internal view that there's really something special and that they've solved a key challenge, that's when we really want to jump in and show that we can bring this, help this company bring this product to market and actually get it to patients.
It's really interesting, and I appreciate how you describe it as really not a one size fits all process. It's something that varies. It's something that's tailored to the specific opportunity that you all might be evaluating. It's also interesting. Again, it sounds like there's true moat to having a world-class R&D organization that can really help further the diligence and evaluation of potential opportunities, just from a scientific evaluation perspective. Out of curiosity, is there a commercial piece as well on the model that gets done? How does that work? Out of
Yeah.
curiosity.
So the beauty of corporate development, and especially here at Gilead, is it's truly cross-functional. So while our team is kind of leading the charge or quarterbacking the deal process, we are bringing in dozens of people across the organization, from research to development to regulatory to manufacturing, commercial, all as part of a broader deal team that's coming in to assess the potential of an asset. And so this is where you can, having that internal expertise, and whether it's on a, antiviral medicine or a specific target in oncology where we have deep domain expertise, that allows us to understand what good looks like with an external project. And then, of course, we need to, so we start with the science, but the commercial opportunity ultimately is how you decide what is this product worth? What is it going to bring to market? And what is the potential for this sort of a medicine? And so that cross-functional collaboration of, defining what the target product profile is, how much market share will this be able to achieve? What does pricing look like in this competitive market? How does it synergize with the existing portfolio that we have? That's all stuff that we will work across with the commercial and development teams to kind of sort out as we then progress a potential deal opportunity.
When you're weighing a potential acquisition, how do you strike the right balance between scientific promise, financial return, and even maybe cultural alignment for like post-acquisition synergies or integration, like post-acquisition integration?
Yeah. It starts almost always with the science. It has to.
Mhm.
In an industry where innovation is critical to differentiation, that scientific piece needs to be there. And that can come in different forms, whether it's a modality approach, or whether it's, a new target that somebody's going after. But at the end of the day, it needs to benefit patients in a way that it's much more efficacious than what's out there. It's much safer than what's out there. It's much more convenient for patients than what's out there. And so there's different levels of how you get to that differentiation, but it needs to happen. And generally, that is driven by the science. But as I talk about that, target product profile you're looking at, that then determines what is the commercial potential for one of these programs. It can be a, incredible scientific advancement, but if you can't actually get it to patients or to enough patients, that challenges what the value proposition is overall. But you raise a great point on the culture piece. I think I've learned this personally, coming as a former banker and now into a company like Gilead, where we've acquired companies, we've done great partnerships with companies. That people piece and that cultural piece is, oftentimes one of the most critical elements to will a collaboration work? Will an acquisition work between companies? And it's something that we spend more and more time on early on in a deal process, saying if it's especially in a collaborative situation, can we actually work with these people? Are we both bringing something to the table? Will the cultures of the organization work in such a way that our research teams will, create the best science coming out of it? Or is there too much territorialism or too much, unwillingness to collaborate or too much pride between the organizations where it actually will stifle the innovation? And so it is something that we spend more and more time on thinking about early on in a deal process of can we actually work with this counterparty, and how do we sometimes have to adjust our approach if we were to do so?
Really interesting. And out of curiosity, I just have to raise it because I know people are thinking it. Does competitive tension ever influence your timeline or decision making?
Absolutely. We love to believe that we are first at the table and we've seen all of the innovation before any of our competitors. Quite frankly, that's not always the case, not usually the case. We get calls all the time from venture capitalists or investors or bankers and others saying, "Hey, this company that you guys have been meeting with for 6 months now, they got a proposal from somebody else. We're going to sign a deal with them in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Are you interested?" So in those situations where otherwise we were maybe taking a more pragmatic approach to a deal, we'll rally the troops and kind of come to the table and say, okay, we thought we were going to solve this issue within a couple months. We need to solve it in a couple weeks. Are we interested? How are we going to compete in this sort of situation? What is our differentiated angle to this transaction? And so absolutely we react to those situations when time pressure calls for it. But what we try to make sure is it doesn't change our fundamental decision making. It doesn't change our bar for innovation and what's going to matter for patients. It's going to change on how we do the work rather than what the ultimate outcome should be.
With so much noise that I'm sure you're used to hearing across the ecosystem, you're getting calls from VCs, you're getting calls from bankers, you're getting inbounds from CEOs of biotechs that think they've uncovered the best in class and first in class solution to any number of diseases. I mean, there's noise all over the place in biotech, pitches, platforms, hot new data releases. How do you find the signal within the noise? And of course, what helps you stay focused on those right opportunities?
Yeah, it's a great question and something that is not easy. And the reason I say that is there's been so much innovation in our sector. There's so many companies. I mean, it's nearly impossible to stay on top of every company, even just within the therapeutic areas that we play in. And so focus and strategy really matter. And so we set up our priorities across each of our individual therapeutic areas that we play in, both from a disease area perspective as well as a scientific approach perspective. We know what we are looking for and the targets we want to go after, and we focus mostly, or I want to focus, 90% of our time on just making sure we stay really well on top of that. Well, and so that we can be best positioned to pursue those opportunities, because otherwise you can get so distracted from what else is happening out there that you have to ground yourself in that fundamental corporate strategy and scientific strategy that we really want to pursue. I think the other element, especially right now, is with the challenging markets and the turbulent macroeconomic times and sort of broader environment, there's so much volatility in our sector that once again, you want to stay grounded to the strategy and the approach you want to take. But at the same time, you need to be nimble when there's opportunities that are out there that otherwise wouldn't present themselves. You need to be flexible in how you approach them. And that's where, within our own team, prioritization on what we are going after becomes really key.
And once a deal closes, how do you think about the integration process? Do you lean towards preserving a team's independence, integrating it quickly in the Gilead ecosystem? I have a feeling you're going to say it doesn't. It's not a one size fits all model. But after all the deals you've done, it helped me better understand how that might work across on a deal by deal basis.
Yeah. I would say this is probably the biggest learning that I've had since joining Gilead, and especially once again coming from the outside as a banker. Your job was done once the deal was closed. You weren't necessarily focused on anything that happened after closing. For me now, that's the most important part of the deal is, getting it done. That could, take a few months of diligence, negotiation, et cetera. Now we're going to live with this for the next decade, decade plus in terms of this product, this team, this portfolio, and how you take a bespoke approach to integrating that company, that program, that asset, that team is really, really critical. And there's lots of factors that play into it. What are capabilities that Gilead has versus what are the capabilities this other company has? And so, for instance, we acquired a company um, 2 or 3 years ago called Miro Bio in the UK in Oxford. Gilead has historically had all of the research based here in California. We've never had a research site outside of California and actually in Seattle. At the time we found one, these people have incredible domain expertise, knowledge around checkpoint agonism and some of the programs they're working on. It's a phenomenally strong team. As opposed to how Gilead has historically done it, let's take an approach of actually leaving the entire team in place and retained for the foreseeable future so we can get the most out of this, not just the two or three near clinical programs we were interested in, but let's see what else we can do with this scientific approach. And by keeping this team of roughly 20 or 30 researchers together to see what more we can do out of this. And so that's a fundamental part of the overall deal process is what are we going to do after we own the asset and sign the deal and close the deal? How are we going to take an approach to really maximize what we can get out of this, with any sort of integration?
I have a curveball question for you. It's coming to mind as I'm hearing you speak. When you look across the ecosystem, and we're seeing a lot of these incubators popping up left and right.
Mhm.
In my head, as you're speaking, there's obviously some potential acquisitions are going to happen spontaneously, but there's also some deals that you might be proactively looking for, given where certain products are in the drug development cycle, clinical development cycle. Is there an opportunity to partner with very strong biotech CEOs who have successfully built companies in the past and maybe work closely with Gilead at the very onset to build a business toward acquisition day one?
Yeah, no, it's a great question and something that we've done before and consider often. A lot of times, I mentioned at the outset of the interview, one of the things that we really rely on is the internal expertise that we have to evaluate a program. We
Mhm.
don't have that expertise in every field. There are fields that will be disruptive to what we do that we don't have the internal expertise. There may be a great CEO, entrepreneur who's developing a modality that could be really transformational for the field. It's still early. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of capital that needs to go into it. Gilead absorbing that from day one probably wouldn't make the innovation flourish in the best possible way. And so these are situations where oftentimes we will be a sort of a proactive partner where we will invest behind a company, maybe just have a person sit on their scientific advisory board or their board of directors to help provide a perspective, help guide where the company goes, but actually not take a hands-on approach to actually controlling what they do or directing their activities, but just provide that advice. And then that allows us to stay incredibly close to the science, the development, so that at the right point, maybe there is a partnership down the road or an acquisition down the road, but it allows us to, one, become educated, and two, help guide the science based on the expertise we can provide without being overly controlling and, inadvertently stifling the innovation or that sort of entrepreneurial spirit of the company.
Devang, this was a true masterclass in how thoughtful BD, corporate development gets done. I'm really excited about this conversation. And again, I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Thanks, Chase. I really appreciate the opportunity.